Opportunities we have here going into our afternoon. We're starting off here inside of the dollar, and DXY is continuing to slide inside of this traditional short setup that we ran into here this morning. Now, there's a little bit of a divergence from the perspective of the euro and the dollar, but the dollar is still inside of this weakness event. Below the 101.16, you could still make a case here for a tailwind for the negative correlations. What are the negative correlations? Everything but the Dow and the Russell. Let's move on here to our bank chart. Bank is stuck between two opposing measured moves, and we ran into a long. We ripped away from those levels yesterday, and for the most part, we've just been going straight sideways at the opposing 50% retracement short from highs. It's a Friday. It's a Friday afternoon. There's nothing really unusual about going sideways on a Friday after 11:30. But bank is in between two setups. What is interesting to note, though, that it is at the top of what could be a range. When you start looking at some of the other markets, you start to ask some questions about kind of the smoke and mirrors that could be forming here when you're only looking at, say, the ES. One thing that did happen here as we were going into our morning is this wild candle going into the 10 o'clock time frame. And it was a massive bid on the VIX. And it broke through the long setup that we were inside of from our old contract lows to highs. Now, we made another new low. And so what that does is it actually reactivates a potential extension. Now, we were making the case here that this wild candle here potentially ran into a 38.2% line of a traditional short from our highs of the week to lows of the week. It looks very similar to what the ES ran into, but it was also the original extension short. And when you're looking at this from the perspective of that through that lens, this is what the traditional looked like, and the anchor that we were using this morning from our 130 lows to lows. That extension short, it broke on the VIX, clearly broke. It didn't break on the ES or NASDAQ. And when we're making another new low like this, it potentially reactivates an extension short. And so we can keep using this extension. The ES just completed its equivalent extension long level. If we continue to go straight down in this extension below the 1741, rounding up to 45 and then adding a tick, the 1750, that could correlate with the indices, the ES and NQ, grinding higher in their variations of extensions. But what I want to point out here is what it looks like inside of our other markets. Because just looking at the ES doesn't tell you the whole story of what's going on here. And looking at bank, looking at the dollar, looking at some of the other broad markets. Let's go out and take a look at some of these other markets. Let's start with NQ. What is NQ inside of? It's not screaming back up into its previous all-time highs. It's coming all the way halfway back short. And you'll notice that this little extension from Wednesday's 130 highs to highs, it defended. No break in trend. It defended. We're going to use that extension as we move along here. We have to go straight up in extensions or not at all. When we're looking at the YM, and I think this is probably one of the most interesting parts of our market as we're going in. This stream continues at eminiaddict.com. The link is in the description. Join me there for tools and resources for learning measured move trading. I wrote the book on the measured move. Check out the hundreds of others that have learned trading plan development, pattern recognition, money management, and trading discipline with me to become the best, most confident trader that you can be.